Welcome to the Explainer. So you finally sit down at your desk, you open your laptop, you stare at that absolutely massive to-do list, and you just stall, right? You don't start. You open a new tab, you check your phone for the 100th time, you do literally anything other than the work staring you right in the face. And look, we all do this, and then we beat ourselves up over it. We tell ourselves we're just being lazy or that we completely lack discipline. We internalize it. But what if I told you your procrastination has absolutely zero to do with laziness? Today, we're diving into a fascinating experiment. A creator actually fed their own procrastination habits into an AI tool to pinpoint the root cause, and they uncovered an incredibly simple 2-minute cure. So let's get into it and see what the data actually says about how we work. Okay, let's dive into this, because this quote completely flips how we usually think about getting things done. It's rarely about the task itself. It's about the size of the first step. See, when we avoid a project, we automatically blame the project, right? We think, oh, I'm putting this off because it's way too hard or it's just so boring. But the data tells a totally different story. Your avoidance, it's almost never about the task. It's all about the size and the friction of that very first step. So we're going to break down exactly why our brains do this, and more importantly, how you can actually hack this little psychological quirk. All right, here's our agenda for today. 1. The real procrastination problem. 2. The AI pattern experiment. 3. The 4-step solution. And 4. The results and final takeaway.
Section 1. The real procrastination problem.
So here's the definition we really need to anchor on. Procrastination is the brain's resistance to a task lacking a clear, low-friction starting point, leading to stalling and compounded guilt. Think about it. Your brain doesn't actually resist the concept of writing a report. What it hates, what it really resists, is the vague, overwhelming ambiguity of where to even begin. It's looking for an entry point. When your brain doesn't know the exact, tiny physical action to take first, it just stalls out. And man, that triggers a vicious cycle. You stall, and the longer you stall, the worse and more guilty you feel. And here's the real kicker. That compounding guilt literally drains your energy. It creates this massive cognitive load. You end up spending way more energy stressing about the task than you would have spent just doing the thing. And that makes it even harder to start tomorrow. So remember, you aren't lazy. Your brain is just rejecting a poorly defined starting line.
Section 2. The AI pattern experiment.
So the creator of this method decided to just stop guessing about why they were putting things off, and they actually started tracking it. For 1 full week, they kept a highly specific procrastination log. Every single time they found themselves avoiding work, they logged 3 things. First, the specific task they were avoiding. Second, the exact time of day. And third, the feelings they had right before they avoided it. The whole goal here was just to gather a clean, objective data set of their own avoidance. To step completely outside of their own emotions and see if there were any hidden triggers they were just completely missing. Now, what's really interesting about this is what happened when they fed that week-long log into an AI tool and asked for patterns. The AI flagged the exact same thing every single time. It had nothing to do with the time of day. It wasn't the type of work or even their mood. The pattern was this: 0 procrastination on tasks broken into a first step under 2 minutes. Let that sink in. If the first step was under 2 minutes, the procrastination literally vanished. The brain simply didn't have the time or the space to build up that wall of resistance. It's such a fascinating insight because it isolates the exact millisecond the breakdown actually happens.
Section 3. The 4-step solution.
All right, so here is the high-level view of the framework that came out of this experiment. It's honestly incredibly straightforward. Step 1, shrink it. Step 2, use momentum. Step 3, track without judgment. And Step 4, review weekly. And you know what makes the system so great? 0 complicated apps, no fancy planners, and absolutely no willpower hacks. Willpower is honestly a trap, as we're going to see. Instead, this system leverages how our psychology naturally works. Let's break down exactly how you can put these steps into action today. Okay, Step 1, shrink it. Before you do anything else, you've got to rewrite your tasks so the entry point takes less than 2 minutes. Let's say your to-do list says, write the report. To your brain, that is a massive, ambiguous threat. It looks at that and just sees a multi-hour commitment with a high chance of misery. You have to shrink it. So the new task becomes, open a blank doc and write 1 sentence. I mean, that is practically impossible to fail at, right? Or say the task is clean the kitchen. Your brain shuts down at the sheer volume of stuff to do. Change it to put 3 dishes in the sink. It takes, 20 seconds? You're artificially lowering that barrier to entry so drastically that your brain just cannot say no.
So the crucial point is this. The goal isn't to finish the task in 2 minutes. Obviously, you can't write an entire report in 2 minutes. The whole purpose of this step is strictly to remove the psychological resistance to starting. You're basically tricking your brain into just getting on the track. It's exactly like turning the key in the ignition of a car. You aren't driving the whole commute yet. You're literally just turning the key. But once the engine is running and you're actually on the track, the dynamics completely change. Which brings us perfectly to step 2, using momentum instead of willpower. Traditional productivity advice usually just tells you to, have more discipline, just power through. But the data shows willpower is a finite resource. It's exhausting and it usually fails, especially at the end of a long day. Momentum, on the other hand, is a physical and psychological law. Think of it like activation energy in chemistry. Once you've supplied that tiny little spark, once you've done the 2-minute version of the task, like opening the doc and writing that one sentence, you are already in motion, and an object in motion tends to stay in motion. It is infinitely easier to keep typing sentence number 2 than it was to sit down and type sentence number 1. So you don't need more discipline, you just needed lower friction at the start.
Now this natural momentum brings us right to step 3, track without judgment. The creator noted how absolutely vital it is to keep a simple log of the task and just a basic binary note of whether you started it or not. That's it, yes or no. If you skip a day, no shame spirals allowed. The entire point here is to gather pattern data, not to beat yourself up. The creator even used Notion AI to auto-tag these entries, which completely eliminated the friction of manually updating some clunky spreadsheet. Your tracking system has to be ridiculously easy and emotionally detached, or else you're just going to start procrastinating on tracking your own procrastination. Finally, step 4 is the weekly review. Once a week, you just look back at your log and ask yourself a very specific question. Which tasks kept stalling, even after I shrank them down to a 2-minute first step? Because if a task is still stalling at the 2-minute mark, the source makes a really brilliant point. That usually isn't procrastination anymore. That's a blaring alarm that the task itself needs to change. You either need to delegate it, delete it from your plate entirely, or just fundamentally rethink how it needs to be done. And this is a huge distinction. Recognizing the difference between plain old procrastination and a fundamentally broken task saved the creator hours of guilt over things they shouldn't have even been doing in the first place. Section 4, Results and Final Takeaway. And this brilliantly illustrates the real-world impact, because the results are totally measurable. Before implementing this 2-minute rule, the creator averaged about 11 completely stalled tasks every single week. The things that just sit on the list, gathering dust and generating all that heavy draining guilt we talked about. But after implementing this simple AI-backed method, that number plummeted to just 3. Now, is it perfect? No, we're human. But dropping from 11 stalled tasks down to 3 is a massive, real, measurable shift in productivity. And again, it took 0 new willpower. It literally just required a smarter approach to starting. Let's lock this all in with a quick 2-minute recap. If you want to fix your procrastination today, here's your playbook. 1. Shrink the task to a first step that takes under 2 minutes. Make it laughably easy. 2. Let momentum do the heavy lifting once you're in motion. Just drop the whole willpower narrative entirely. 3. Track your starts without any judgment or shame. Just treat it like pure data. And 4. Review weekly so you can delegate or delete the tasks that still just won't budge. It's incredibly simple, but as the data clearly shows, it absolutely works. So I want to leave you with this question to chew on as soon as this explainer wraps up. Look at your own messy to-do list right now. Which intimidating, heavy task can you shrink down to a 2-minute first step today? Seriously, don't write the report. Just open the document. Stop fighting your brain's natural resistance and start using momentum to your advantage. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. I really hope this helps you clear out that backlog, and I'll see you next time.